Why does this always happen to me? Everybody repeats patterns. It's part of the programming of the nervous system. It's kind of the way the human soul is set up.
When you do this work that we're about to talk about, it can actually change your microbiome. And I just was like, okay, I'm in on all of it.
The heart sends out an electromagnetic signal, and the signal of the heart is significantly more powerful than that of the mind. And in fact, what I've understood is it sends out an electromagnetic signal 3 meters outside of the body. And she's just settled into that, and she's not doing anything different, but all of her relationships in her family are changing because she's different. We have way more power to change the world than we think. Number 1, become conscious. Number 2, learn the language of the heart.
Welcome back.
Hey, thanks.
I've missed you being in the studio. This is going to be exciting.
Conversation with you has been easy, and I was thinking this morning, you know, that with the kind of work that I do, I always love to hear your take on it and your response to it, because we overlap in the way we think. You're very biological about it, but not separate from the mental and emotional.
For sure.
And I'm much more kind of the mental, emotional. So it's always helpful to me to hear the physiological.
Well, I'm excited to have this conversation, and because I've been doing this work with you. I've been working with you for several years, obviously, and it's just been transformative. But I don't know if it was just I was ready for it now, finally. But I remember when I first started seeing you about 3 years ago, and I came to you because I was having a situation in my life that had been repeated over and over throughout my whole life. And I finally looked at it, and I was like, and I remember saying this to you, I was like, I'm the common denominator here. Yeah. So I guess, bad things have happened to me, hard things have happened to me, you know, throughout my whole life. But what am I maybe doing to draw it? Not that I'm saying I'm causing other people to behave in a certain way.
Sure. Or maybe you are.
Or maybe I am. Exactly.
But I'm sure that's part of our conversation today.
And so, you know, we've been working with each other in this space for a long time. But then over this last, 6 months or so, actually less than that probably, you've really shifted me into a deeper level of this conversation that has just profoundly changed a lot for me, and it does impact the physical. I know before we started talking, we're like, are we going to bring in the mental, spiritual piece into the physical? But I'm going to tell you how I know it does, and I'm going to just give you a quick story about, I've been on bringing this gut mapping protocols into my clinics, this GI mapping. Yeah. And looking at the gut microbiome and what's going on there. Well, my test results that came back really astounded me. I thought I was doing a lot better than I was. But as you know, I mean, I had a lot of stress in my life. I've had a lot of stress in my life, my whole life, but especially over the last year or 5 years or so. And I was listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza, which you had me read and listen to some of his work. And he made a specific comment that really resonated with me of how when you do this work that we're about to talk about, it can actually change your microbiome. And I just was like, okay, I'm in on all of it. And he talked...
They've documented that like crazy. Like they've got so many pages and so many different studies that they've done in their own setting.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to talk about this journey. And I just want to have you kind of start talking about this concept of unraveling from ourselves and some of the things that I just shared with you, because obviously you're the teacher in this area, but I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to really help a lot of people.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And, I think you say in the last 6 months, I've taken you to a deeper place. I would say in the last year, I've gone to a deeper place. And so because that's true, I think we all affect the people around us.
Absolutely.
We can't necessarily cause people around us to do something, but to the degree we allow each other to be affected,
right,
one person's change becomes the change of, option for people around them to change. And let me say this. You said something a minute ago. When we first started working, there was this pattern that would repeat in your life. And then you said, but then I stopped and looked, and I was the common denominator. In the first half of that, you're like every other human in the world, right? Everybody repeats patterns. It's part of the programming of the nervous system. It's kind of the way the human soul is set up. And it's, if we think of things people struggle with, not just in terms of some experience I had as a child, but how the nervous system brings that into the present, how the mind and the emotions bring that into the present, then we can see it in present day patterns. And if we interrupt the present day patterns, everything changes, depending on how we interrupt them.
It's hard.
It's very hard. And in fact, we'll get in a minute to why that's so hard. But the second thing I wanted to say is where you're not like everybody else is you stopped for a minute and said, I'm the common denominator. And that's the moment where people begin the journey of change that not everybody begins.
And can I just say for people listening, and maybe already we just started, so it's going to kind of unfold, but this could be anything in your life, right? Whether it's a health issue, finances, relationships, whatever it is.
If you're a hoarder, if you've got an addiction, any pattern that you've started to realize, why does this always happen to me?
Yeah.
Even as simple as, and it's a fairly common one, why do people always drive so slow in front of me? Right. And at some point, I use that illustration because everybody can quickly go, oh, if everybody's driving too slow, I can actually start to look at my own speedometer and go,
maybe I'm driving too fast.
Maybe it's my speed, not everybody else's speed that's the problem.
Or vice versa,
But it is that moment. And part of why it's difficult, part of what's hard about the change is it takes a certain willingness to consider yourself as, I don't like any of the language that I'm about to use, maybe I'm the problem. We don't like to see ourselves as less than who we previously considered ourselves to be. We don't like to see ourselves in a bad light. We don't like to see ourselves in a negative light. And in fact, we have a lot of unconscious programming to keep us from seeing what we don't want to see. But I honestly believe there's certain things about reality and the way that the world is set up that will always give you an opportunity to be confronted with things. I think that car coming up in front of you that's going slower than you 7 different times is an opportunity to go, what if I look at my speedometer and the repeating patterns that you described and the repeating patterns that everybody has is an opportunity to either go, curse that world that's so mean to me, or I'm the common denominator.
Right. And even can't you see these patterns in people that are always sick? And I'm not saying they're faking sick. They literally have ailments constantly,
So let me say something really important about that. Because I just had this conversation with somebody the other day because it's so important what you said. They're not faking.
It's real.
But sometimes people will say that's all in your head. And the reality is your head drives what's in your body.
Yep.
Right. And so what happens, and I can say this freely because I've heard my wife say this in public before. When she was younger, and you've had her on here before.
Yeah, she's talked
when she
about
was
her
younger,
story.
she had several abusers in her life. And she learned that if she was sick, they would back off. So at some point, she was more friends with being sick than she was with the people in her life who abused her. She developed a partnership in her mind and her heart with illness. And she's noticed that
served her.
Right. It served a purpose for her that was actually a functional purpose in her younger years. And she started to really take a deep dive look at, if I've made friends with it, I'm going to need to change my friendships.
Right.
Which is part of the work, right? To look and go, where has my mind, and more importantly, where has my heart made an agreement with something that today is detrimental to me? What was once a positive adaptation becomes a negative adaptation because it might have worked in childhood, but in adulthood, it's incredibly destructive.
Yep, that's great.
So it's, again, back to what we were saying, it's the willingness to stop and go, what if I look at myself and consider I might be, if not the source, at least participating in something.
Oh, I like that too, participating in it.
I think
unwittingly.
I think one of the barriers to the whole process is shame.
Yeah.
Right. Shame is such a beast. And often when I teach about shame, I start by saying, the number one fear in America is public speaking. The number 2 fear is death.
That's true. That's an actual statistic.
So it's an actual statistic. And what that means is at every funeral, everybody would rather be the person in the box than the one giving the eulogy, right? Why is public speaking such a terrifying thing for people? And the answer is because we're going to stand in front of people with the potential of failure,
right?
Potential of mistakes, and really more importantly, the potential of being seen.
It's so vulnerable.
And so it's shame that wars against us being seen. Therefore, shame wars against us being who we really are.
I love it.
Right. So the idea that we would look at dysfunction, that we would look at problems that we participate in, or maybe even cause. The idea that we would look at those things when shame starts to kick in, all of our unconscious defenses kick in and go, I don't want to see that. I'd rather be the guy in the box than the one who looks at myself and thinks of myself as maybe contributing to the struggles I have.
What's interesting that's coming up for me when you're saying this is that all of us have an innate, in our core being, desire to be seen.
Oh.
Yeah. But we do everything to hide.
So we can say it this way. Some of the things we need the most are the things we're afraid of. Mm-hmm. And this is really, there's so many important things about this conversation. Here's the thing. If the real me shows up and I get rejected, it's devastating.
Yeah.
But if I bring a false version of me and I get rejected, that's what that false version was made for.
But often we don't know that we're presenting the false version, and it feels just as devastating. And that's one thing I've learned.
Yeah. It feels devastating, but it's actually the first opportunity to deconstruct that false version. Yeah. That moment when the false version hits either the repeated pattern or the rejection or potential rejection or the failure, the business crashes, whatever it might be, when the false version hits that, often that's really a gift that allows people to start letting those walls crumble. Mm-hmm. And as the walls crumble, that's a lot of times the first time people know that's a false version of themselves.
Well, for just the sake of this audience, can you give a tangible of what a false version of ourselves might be, or a mask that we might be wearing would look like?
Oh, 100%. And the thing is, I want to talk about the purpose of it, and then I'll give an example.
Okay.
I'll give a personal example because it's the easiest. I know it the most intimately. The function of it is we come into the world, like you said, the thing we most want is to be seen. Mm-hmm. Therefore, the thing we most fear is not being seen.
About what age does that start happening? Because as babies and toddlers, we don't care. We make sure we're seen and heard.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say, people start to develop increasingly complex cognitive skills around 7 or 8, but still that might be the roots of it, depending on some family situations and kind of the role you play in your family. But somewhere between late elementary school and middle school, one of the reasons middle school is such a difficult place is because kids are moving out of the and again, not everyone has a secure family, but kids are generally moving out of the security of, at least I know the environment of my family. And now not only am I at school, but I'm at school while I'm changing. And I'm having to figure out, and all the fear of being, for women more probably than men, the fear of being seen in their secondary sexual development, the fear of being, teased, all the different things in middle school. And so we start to develop.
Excluded.
Yeah. Anything. Rejected. Yeah. Scorned, teased, all those different things, the more fear that we have. And so that develops increasingly in those late elementary, early middle school years.
Early teens.
So that's when it comes in. But what we end up doing then is we start to build, I'm so afraid of being rejected. And all this is unconscious, by the way.
Yeah.
And that's why at first we don't know that it's a false version. It's an unconscious process by which we start to say, what will it take for me to be accepted? How do I want to be seen? Yeah. If I want to be seen, I want to be seen like this. And so even though I may be more introverted, I'm going to, put on a version of me that's more extroverted. Well, inside I'm like, I hope they like me. Or, I may be more extroverted, but so all these different, we're putting on a version of ourselves that we believe will make the world safe. We believe will create people valuing us, people seeing us, people validating us, and create safety for us. And so it's a very gradual and unconscious process, and it's taking place usually at a place where kids are pretty concrete. And so it's like the cards are stacked against us. And so often, to the greater degree that a family environment's unstable, then that's the degree to which people really pack on that external
all the
self.
masks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the more the world feels unsafe, the more we create to feel safe.
And I think, in this day and age too of social media, and it's even worse because there's all these false versions of everybody out there.
We have filters to make us physical looking, right?
It's crazy. I have a filter. Yeah. That can make me flawless, which is wild to me. But especially for women and young women, and I think this is where we see a lot of this. And you see it in men in different ways. Men have false versions in a totally different way than women, but we tend to contort and dress certain ways and do certain things to, be seen by whomever we want to be seen by. And that mask can change depending on, I'm speaking from experience,
sure.
Depending on the audience.
I've heard of people that do that, right?
Depending on the audience, whether it's a person or whatever. So it's really important to first be able to recognize that I think this is just everybody's falls prey to this, right? I mean, to be human is to wear these masks.
And by the way, this is why imposter syndrome is such a big thing.
Yeah.
Because we actually become imposters.
Yeah.
We actually become an imposter, and we're terrified that someone's going to find the real us. So we're walking this tightrope of hanging on to these false selves while the inside is going, I want to be seen, but if I open the door and the longer, by the way, that we maintain these masks, the more terrifying it is to think about taking them off because we've become someone increasingly different than the real us.
Well, and then don't we kind of a little bit become addicted to the masks? We can talk about that too.
Yeah, we get addicted to it. We get addicted to it, but we also create a life around them.
Yeah.
Right. So I said I was going to give a private example. You asked for an example. So I know sometimes it's hard for people to see this in me, but when I was younger, for whatever reasons, I had incredible social anxiety. Like, I would not get on the phone, talk to people. If my parents asked me to do something that involved communicating with someone outside the family, I'd freeze.
You sound like the modern day Gen Zer.
Right.
I
was just ahead of my time, right? And so...
no offense to any Gen Zs in the audience.
Of course.
The communication skills are lacking.
And then when I went to middle school, and there's a few moments when public speaking was asked of, to get a grade, I literally froze twice in front of my class. And my teacher stopped having me do that because 2 different times I just froze and couldn't get a word out.
Catatonically frozen.
No, couldn't speak. And so around age 14, 15, 16, some big changes took place for me. And I started to gradually come out of my shell. And the first time I really did a public speaking thing at that point, I had a really great response to it. Like a really good response for a 15, 16-year-old kid that was his first time ever. And I was like, oh, this feels kind of good. Like, wait, the thing I was most afraid of, I did it. And people are responding and saying it was great. And they're responding with an emotional response to what I was talking about. And maybe I want to be that. And so I literally swung over this way, and I became kind of falsely extroverted, but also like, I always called myself cool Bible teaching guy. Not at the time, but looking back at that, I created this version of myself because I started getting into a world where, with Bible believing people, if I could be kind of outside the box and different and, do it in a way that was cool, I was like, I got so much great response to that.
Yeah.
And here's the thing is it's not
validating.
Yeah. It's very validating. It feeds the ego. It soothes that fear, but and the thing is, it's not entirely not me. So I do think that there's things about my speaking and teaching these days that are an important part of my core self.
Right.
So many things to talk about. But it became, I even took that thing that was valuable, built up a version of it that was like, this is now who I am because this is getting me accepted. And I started realizing there's still a lot of, for my family of origin, there's still a lot of kind of broken things in here that are never going to, and it's a longer story than we probably won't get into here. A lot of broken things in here that I'm not going to get to if I always maintain cool Bible teaching guy.
Yeah.
And so at a period in my early 20s, I purposefully kind of took that down.
It's like an armor that you're wearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I spent a season of my life just kind of hiding and waiting to see who really emerged.
Yeah.
But it was that swing from terrified to I'm going to do it all the time.
Yeah.
And somewhere in the middle, there's a more introverted, but not afraid.
Yeah.
And somewhere in my early 20s, I had to let this person kind of fade away and die for me to find this middle place that I feel much more comfortable in my skin than either one of these really was. That's the false self. I've worn both of those.
Okay, so that's a good description of the false self, and then how that can impact us continuing to manifest the same situations over and over in our life. I think that's foundational to that, right?
Yeah. So let me jump ahead and come back to that, because I think be great for us to have that conversation. Yeah. And I want to talk about kind of the end of the road, or the direction we'll end up.
Yeah.
One of the things, because I'm in counseling these days and I see people in my office 3 or 4 days a week, and I do other things where I'm working with people to help them change.
In counseling as a counselor.
Yes. I often say I've been in counseling for 30 years. I think it's starting to really work through. Whew, thank goodness. But yes, counseling people. And occasionally getting counsel from a source. I always say, if your counselor doesn't see a counselor from time to time, you should probably find a better one, right? Not a better one, but one who's willing to make sure they're doing their work.
Sure.
So often people come in because of a symptom, kind of in your line of work, right? And probably what I'm about to say fits exactly the way you think about your line of work. And so people come in with a symptom. I've got anxiety, I've got depression, I've got some kind of dysfunction in relationships that repeats over and over again. And often what they're saying is, how do I stop the symptom? And whether overtly in that moment or at some point early on, I want to say, what if that's not the right question? What if the real question is, who am I? And we stop asking, how do I stop the negative thing, and start asking, who am I when the negative stuff is gone? And there's a difference between writing, am I sick focused or health focused, but in the mental, emotional space.
Sure.
Right. So if I just want to look at my symptom and get rid of it, I can get rid of depression, but still never become who I really am.
Right.
I can work on people's anxiety, help their nervous system settle down, do some EMDR. But if I don't really at least point them, if not help them walk this journey of, but there's something bigger than just not being sick. If you're not sick, you're not necessarily healthy.
That's right.
I've heard.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I figured that out when I got my gut mapping test back.
Yeah. And so at the center of my work is really helping people shift from the question, how do I change this behavior, emotional state, cognitive process? How do I change that, to saying, how do I answer the question, who am I and what's my purpose for being here? People start to answer that question. Some of the stuff starts to fall off right away because even the focus on this maintains it.
Yeah. Well, you've even asked, we talked about this last week when we were together, and I think I told you, I was like, I don't even really know who I am. I don't really know. I think I know. It really gets you thinking, you think you know who you are. And I think, oh, well, I'm Terri, the clinician and the speaker and the author, but that's not really who I am. Those are just things I do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. In a second, I want to ask you to talk about that dream that you
Yes. Okay, good.
Give me a second to get there.
Yeah.
That's the perfect moment, I think, to talk about that. But let me back up and say, your initial question was, what does the false self have to do with the symptomology or the struggles that people have? And the thing is, anything less than you is less than you.
All these riddles.
Any version of you that's not the fullest version of you it's like asking someone to function as a fully tuned athlete when you haven't really gotten their muscles developed, their capacity, their cardio capacity. And so you're saying anything less than you, a finely tuned athlete, man, their cardio is high, their muscles are strong.
And they've been training a lot.
They've been training for it, and they get there and it's like, now I can step into being me. But when you say, how do I do this? Well, there's some steps to do that, and you walk through this. But when you're not that, there's some dysfunction to it. Working to get here helps you overcome the dysfunction. The dysfunction is, I'm less than myself if I'm not being myself. And less than myself has some inherent, I don't like the word brokenness. I'm not crazy about the word dysfunction. It has some inherent less than-ness. So you had said before we started filming about the dream that you had. Yeah. And you asked the question, what does symptomology have to do with false self? With false self, we build this up out of willpower and unconscious psychological processes, which we can look at those processes in a little bit. But the target then is to take all this stuff down and discover, I would say discover and uncover who you really are.
Yeah.
And sometimes we think, yeah, but what does that mean? Does that mean I'm a teacher and not a lawyer? Does that mean I'm an artist and not a, whatever? But the who we really are is a more existential thing than what we do.
Right.
So now talk about your dream. You told me about this and I felt it.
Yeah. So, well, let me set the kind of the stage for this conversation with just, I already kind of said it when we first started talking, but I've been on this journey with you to figure out, why the same situations in my life keep showing up, and mostly relationally, whether that's friends, family, spouse, whatever. It's, no secret. I've been married a few times. So, but just really trying to really go, what is this about me? And, you said something important I just thought about. And I remember, I think the moment I started my journey of endless proving. And
have you ever said that before?
I stole that term from Alice Armstrong.
Okay. The journey of endless proving.
Yeah.
Because that's what all this false self is.
Exactly. That's why I want to talk about it. So, I learned this concept of endless proving from her. But I have been on a journey of endless proving for, how old am I? Let's see, that started when I was about 19.
Yeah.
And I dated a guy that came from a pretty wealthy family, and they were, his sister was a debutante. It was a level of a lifestyle that I had never experienced growing up in, with a family of 6 and a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house.
Now you've really got to prove yourself.
Yeah. Well, and what's worse was I was a single mother of a 2-year-old and a high school dropout. And he was a little bit of the black sheep of the family, but, he was going to college and, all this kind of stuff. Well, when our relationship developed and it was really serious, I remember sitting down they invited me to dinner. He wanted me to meet his parents, and was sitting down at dinner, and his father, and I'm just me, I'm just me. I hadn't figured out that me wasn't good enough yet. I had really not been told that by an experience in my life yet. I had probably a little bit in junior high school or whatever, but not to this degree. And I remember us sitting there, and he says, "So what does your daddy do?" in that Southern drawl.
Oh, my.
I know. And so I said, "Oh, he's a..."
That question is so weighted.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, my Lord.
It was this blindside. I mean, I didn't even think of it. I was honest. I was like, "Oh, he's a bricklayer." Because that's what my dad did. He was a brick mason. He laid bricks for a living. He's a blue collar worker. And I remember the click shift right in that moment. And then I knew I said something wrong. And
how did you know?
The energy shifted.
Yeah.
The energy in the room
shifted. Did you see it or feel it or both?
I felt it.
Yeah.
I felt it, and I saw it a little bit too.
I ask because that's important.
Yeah.
Right. There's more than one way to know something.
Yeah.
There's our 5 senses, and then there's kind of the way that we sense the atmosphere around us.
Yep.
And most of the important things that we need to know don't come through our 5 senses.
Right.
They come through that other sensory experience.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to that. But
well, and in thinking back, that's probably was my first actual intuitive sense. So, from that moment, I felt a great deal of shame around who I was and who I came from. It wasn't good enough. But it turned into a positive, because that's the moment I decided to enroll in community college. So at least, and also at the time, I was a cake decorator at a grocery store. So I was a 19-year-old, single mother of a 2-year-old, high school dropout, working a job making $5 an hour, right? And so I decided at that moment to shift my narrative, and that I was going to be a student, right? A college student, because that's what 19-year-olds are supposed to be doing. So that's where my journey of endless proving began. And then, fast forward about 4 years in community college, and this counselor called me in. This is back when counselors actually called you in to talk to you. And she's like, "Listen, you have 120 community college hours, and you need to pick a degree. You got to do something. You can't stay in community college forever." I was a professional student because that was my identity. So when anybody asks, I'm a student. And also, by the way, that's also the time where you could test in And if you passed certain base tests in math and English, you didn't have to have a high school diploma or a GED. So I was a high school dropout and I tested into community college. And anyway, she goes, how about nursing? And I was like, I thought about it and I was like, well, I don't know. I don't know really what that is. I'm thinking about giving people shots and, changing bedpans and things like that. And she goes, the starting pay is $10 an hour, twice as much as you make right now. I'm like, sign me up. She said, you can finish with all your basics. You can finish in a year and a half. So that started my trajectory of that.
I just want to say, because I had said...
You've never heard this story.
I hadn't heard that, but this false version of me that was not me, but not me. It's fascinating how often in the early part of our journey, and I'm just going to say that I think that there are other forces at work.
Of course.
Right.
This is to me God going, kick,
right.
kick.
Right.
Get on this path, girl.
Somewhere up there, he's going, what am I going to have to do?
Yeah, how am I going to get her on the path? Yeah.
But so it's not you. And in fact, you are. I know you as this version of you. You're still a student.
Yes, I am.
You're no longer a community college student, but you are a student because you're a teacher.
Yep. I'm a knower and grower. I love to know and I love to research. And so I, got my nursing degree and then it just kept building from there. And then, at the time I waited tables and I was always put into really quickly in any job I had, a leadership role right away. So that leadership thing kind of started developing, in the hospital. And, I guess the rest, as they say, kind of is history. But what's interesting is I've noticed in looking back this pattern of endless proving that I'm worth it, proving my value, contorting myself in situations to be a certain version or whatever version of myself that I think, which is usually not correct, that the people around me want to see.
Because thinking is not the source of who we are.
Correct.
Right.
I'm giving you so much gold.
Oh, my word.
I'm going to shut up in a minute and let you talk about it.
But you're still headed for the dream.
I'm headed for the dream.
Right. Because who we are comes from here, not from here.
Right.
This interprets it. This often communicates it. But the core of it is the heart.
Yeah.
And I'm actually understanding that better than ever at age 63.
Yeah.
I'm really both seeing it and experiencing it in ways that are brand new to me. And I could have taught some stuff about it 4 years ago, but I feel like even my last year, like I said, some big changes. And it's the understanding that the idea of the heart isn't just kind of an emotional thing. Mm-hmm. It's a different type of sensory organ.
Yep.
But I want to say this. You and I both live a fairly public life.
Mm-hmm.
We speak in public places. We were here on a public podcast. And sometimes the hardest place to live the line between endless proving and being ourselves is in front of people.
Hey, and I'm telling my story, so here we are.
That's why I'm saying I'm so proud of you. And I want you, when you talk about your dream, I want you to be in it. You know what I'm saying?
I can, because it just happened this morning.
Yeah. Now, this is yours, and I don't, but I just think there's so much, when you talk to me about it off camera, there is so much power in your telling of the story. I don't want your people to miss the power of that.
Yeah. Well, I'll just keep telling the story. So, you fast forward through layers, 1, 2, 3 marriages, children,
endless proving. And
then what's interesting, and I got to say this is, what's interesting is the fed upness of when things weren't going right in a situation in my life, and then just dipping out rather than looking at myself, right? So so you look back on, I'm 58 now. This started when I was about 18, 19. So, 40 years of layers of armor.
Yeah. And I want to drive a stake in. You said dipping out. I want to apply a word that's going to come back in our conversation later, and that is disconnection.
Disconnecting, of course.
When we disconnect from self, that's when we start building the false self, and that's why the dysfunction is so strong, because we're building it from disconnection.
Well, it's interesting you saying that right now is I was disconnecting from an aspect of my life, but I really was disconnecting from an aspect of myself.
Yes.
Well done, counselor. Okay, so that was the news. See, I'm getting counseled right here live on the podcast. So layers of all this armor. So the thing that, just for everybody to know, the thing that we've been working on, and I've been going, pretty deep into Joe Dispenza's work alongside of you and your work, which is very similar in this particular realm, is getting deep into that space where you can really release all of that from the past and, birth the new version and I love this concept of living as if this version of me that I really am desiring already exists. So I've been doing a lot of this work. Go ahead. You got to say something.
The reason you can do that and not be faking it is because if you desire that version, that means she's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's why you desire it.
Okay. She's in there somewhere.
She's in there somewhere. And people think desire is a bad thing.
Yeah.
And the reason they think that is because desire ends up getting attached to some harmful things. But desire is often an internal indicator that says that's a true thing about you.
Yeah.
I had desired to be a musician long before I ever started playing a musical instrument. And that desire indicates it's in here.
Right.
That desire to be that person says, hey, this is the real you. Keep coming this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that you're interrupting the story and pulling these nuggets out, because it's super helpful, not just for me, but for everybody listening to me. I've been doing a lot of this work and getting more connected and practicing meditation and really, aligning my nervous system with my body, because one of the things I'm learning is my mind has been controlling things in the wrong way. So I've been really doing this work. Well, I went in to meditate this morning and listening to, remembering all the things around it. And it's okay if my mind wanders, just come back to the thing. So I was about probably 15, 20 minutes in. I don't know, lost track of time. And
that's a good sign.
The guided meditation I was doing brought back to my memory a dream I had last night. And in the dream, it was very chaotic. There was a lot of chaos. I don't really know where I was, if it was a house, a building, but there was I could feel in the dream chaos.
Yeah.
And I went into this room to look for something.
Pause and take a breath.
I went into this room to look for something, and I looked down into this steel kind of bowl tank thing, and there's a baby in water. Just floating there. And at first I thought it was a dead baby. But
all of that matters.
I know. You're going to break it down. And then I looked in there and I actually saw that baby taking a breath. And I picked the baby up out of the water because I'm like, oh, she's alive. Like, she's breathing. And so when I picked her up out of the water, I held her because I'm thinking she's cold, she needs warmth, she needs comfort. And then this is just coming to me.
Oh, yeah.
And then I go back out the door because Dan was in my dream. Dan's my husband. And he walks up and I said, look, I found this baby. And then I look at her face and she has black hair and piercing blue eyes and a spray of freckles across her nose.
Is that like someone you know?
Yeah. And Dan goes, wow, she looks just like you. We should keep her. And I remembered that dream in the middle of my meditation. And I shared with you when I was feeling that I started kind of internally happy, not sad, but this kind of weepy, like, wow, that's you,
Yeah.
And when I finished that meditation, which that was towards the end of the meditation, I just was in awe of, and I started processing it. And I was like, that dream, that baby was me finding myself.
Yes.
And loving her. Oh, yep. I'm going to choke up.
Yeah.
But it was pretty cool.
Yeah. And this is where we could, talk about concepts and ideas and all this kind of stuff. But
where do you want to go with it now?
The sensation you had in the moment you began to connect to what that dream really was and what that was about, where in your body was that sensation?
In my heart center.
right.
Yeah, for sure.
Because the things of our truest self, the things of our truest identity aren't concepts and ideas. I'm actually going to talk about the brain in a minute, but in a different way than I think we may have in the past. But our truest self begins here. Tell me if this is accurate. I've been told this. When the fetus starts to develop in the womb, the heart develops before the brain. Mm-hmm. Right? So everything's secondary to that. Right? We don't get on and go to the gynecologist to listen to the brain waves.
Yeah.
We go to listen to the heartbeat. Right? So here's what happens. When a child's born, taken out of the water, when a child's born, the whole first 18 months of their life, the right side of their brain is developing.
It's really hitting me right now in this exact moment about that dream.
Yeah.
Like, keep going.
Oh, take a breath.
That's
I'll
crazy.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the right side of the brain is developing, and the baby is literally learning, but doesn't know any language. So imagine if you're a learner, but you don't know language.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of learning is a child doing in that first 18 months of life?
Yeah.
What they're learning is something called attachment. Mm-hmm. Right? And attachment is this. Mm-hmm. People make eye contact, parents hold them, they feel warmed, they feel fed, they feel cared for, they feel protected, they feel safe, if they do, because not all children do. Mm-hmm. But the attachments that they form is where they also develop a sense of self. So for 18 months to 2 years, before a child has any language, they are learning like crazy, but they're learning, oh, that's what it feels like when dad holds me. Mm-hmm. Oh, mom's feeding me. I feel so comforted and safe. And they're learning this thing called attachment. And over time, about 18 months to 2 years, they first start to go, ma, and mom's eyes light up and they go, that person who comforts me likes that sound, mama, ma, ma, ma. Next thing you know, they start to form words. And as they form words, they start to associate those words with the experiences they're having. So the left brain starts to develop right around 18 months to 2 years. And what it forms is language. So it learns to label things. That's mom, that's dad, that's grandpa. That's grandma, that's, but then that's a banana and that's water. Mm-hmm. They learn to label things, but then they learn to analyze things. I like bananas. I don't like spinach. Mm-hmm. They're starting to analyze, how do I think about these experiences I'm having? Because the right brain's all about experience, still no language. And then they start to, label, analyze, now organize. How do I get a banana and not get spinach? How do I get mom to come pay attention to me? How do I get mom to stop paying attention to me if I don't like what's happening? And the left brain is figuring everything out in an analytical, organizational way. And the right brain and the left brain are supposed to work together and say, how do I make this experience happen again and again? Mm-hmm. But then when experience starts to be uncomfortable, we get to middle school. Later in life, we start to feel shame. Our body starts to change and we feel uncomfortable emotions. Or let's say the home that we're in is dangerous in a range of different ways. And so the left brain feels safer. Because the right brain's all about experience and attachment. And if either attachment's not available or it's painful and experiences are painful, the right brain is like, I can talk about it and feel it less. I can analyze it, and this can kind of go, can be set aside.
Take a back seat, like quiet that right brain down.
Right. So the Western mind, or, those of us who are kind of born into Western cultures, we typically continue that migration too far into the left brain. Yep. And in the left brain, we become very good at label and analyze and organize. And we can get master's degrees and doctor's degrees, and we can get multiple degrees.
Well, that's part of my endless proving. I just kept going to school.
And if we don't get degrees, we find other ways with the left brain to construct things to keep the right brain from having painful experiences. Right. And that's where the false self comes from. The left brain says, I'll take care of you. And it's almost always intellectual, performative, external. It gives instructions about what things to say, what things not to say, what things to do.
Or what to wear, or how to look, or whatever the case may be.
And so in the typical thing, a woman would be more about attractiveness. A male would be more about strength and dominance. And, we start to develop false versions around whatever messaging we've gotten and makes us feel the safest. But we move out of the right brain and we start to live a life of performance, and the right brain, or the experience of self, the experience of identity and connection, comes buried underneath that, or maybe put underwater. And if you really start to consider, it's like, well, she's not even alive. Mm-hmm.
I know, it's crazy. That's the exact thought I thought.
This part's not even alive because this part's been working so hard.
Yeah.
And you go on this journey. Let's talk about meditation for a second, because I think it's, because you've talked about it, I love for people to get a sense of what we're really talking about.
Yeah.
The difficulty for us is most of the time, when we talk about disconnection, that's one of the reasons I wanted to highlight that word. When we talk about disconnection, we've got some pretty consistent strategies in the human race. And one of them is the repetition of the past. Mm-hmm. The repetition of the past is when the nervous system, which is basically a tape recorder, records certain events and then plays them over and over again.
Yep.
And the unconscious mind is recording these events. And one of the reasons people repeat patterns is because the unconscious mind has recorded these events and then plays them every morning.
Yep. And we're living as if those past events are still happening.
Right.
So then we recreate those past events.
Right. And then we try to build a future that avoids those events or somehow endlessly proves that we're not what the person that those events suggest. And the one place that we're not is in the present.
Yeah.
We're in the past, living that over and over again. We're in the present, trying to create safety and connection and all the things we can never get from false self. And the one place that we're not actually in is the present moment. Mm-hmm. And in that moment is where that baby is. Mm-hmm. Right? She wasn't running around. Mm-hmm. She was lying, apparently almost dead, in a bassinet in water, right? And your first thought was, oh, she's alive.
Well, my first thought is somebody killed this baby. Mm. Somebody killed this baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because remember, there was a lot of chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we talked about this a little bit before. The chaos of the world, the material world system really kind of wars against living in the present moment. Mm-hmm. And the present moment is also the idea of connection and attachment, because when we connect to ourselves, that means living in the present. When we start to disconnect, it's because we're in the past or in the future. And so meditation is a simple practice that says, regardless of what's been happening or what I'm afraid of or want to have happen, I'm going to set aside some time to practice being present.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like mindfulness, but more intentional. And the idea would be also to get present in the mind so that we're not running somewhere else, and stay there so that we can reconnect. Well,
and what I've learned about it, because, I have this science brain that it's one of the reasons we both, and I knew I would love Joe Dispenza's work, is because he explains things scientifically, what's physiologically happening in the brain when you're meditating. And it is literally those pathways really aligning, and there's concordance instead of discordance in your brain, which translates to what's happening in your body. And he even talks about people that have really healed themselves from major diseases. Like, he has it videoed. It's the craziest thing. And they've done
and documented
MRI studies of brain patterns of even a Parkinson's patient going from, this brain pattern on the MRI. I don't think you've seen this part yet. And through meditation, through 7 days of meditation, watch this blue dead brain wake up and start sparking and becoming red and orange on the MRI, where it's awake and alive. Yeah. And depressed. It's fascinating. So for me, that makes sense to me. It's not just this woo-woo, I'm a guru space, because a lot of people think of meditation and they think of wacky out there, or whatever, just granola, crunchy hippies, whatever.
Right. Or which is one of the reasons I wanted to stop and define it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm glad you went the scientific route as well, because, when we're not in the present, we lose the power of both the mind and the heart. Mm-hmm. When we disconnect, it's kind of like we've got a great computer, but it's unplugged and its battery's almost dead. Mm-hmm. Or it's jammed up with all kinds of different programs that are running simultaneously. And so we've got all this capacity, but we've just so mixed it up with the endless proving. Mm-hmm. I'm borrowing that from
you. No, it's a great term. It's not mine.
False self, regret from the past, shame from the past, shame about the future. Mm-hmm. All those things rob from us this moment, where when the brain and the heart can really connect, that in that moment you find the baby in the bassinet and realize she was never dead. Mm-hmm. She's just not here and here. Mm-hmm. She's not in the present. She's not in the past. She's right here. And so when you start to really reconnect to the true created nature of your mind and your heart, and those things align, one of the things that you hear Joe Dispenza say often is we have this internal capacity to create a pharmacy of chemicals endogenously.
Yeah.
That we're not buying it somewhere and taking it. We're creating it from our own system. And that's why they see those massive healings. They've documented all that as well. And so there really is some power there that we're not tapping into. It's more than just, I feel better about myself. It's, I am myself, and myself is more powerful than I thought.
And it's also, what I'm understanding is when you're able to center like that, for whether, you start with 15 and then 20 and then 30 minutes and an hour, like however you graduate to, and then be able to, in any moment of the day, kind of go into that quiet space, even for 10 minutes to reset for something else. It just fosters and blossoms creativity and your creative nature of what your gift is, no matter what your job is.
Right.
You can be a cross guard and have a purpose and make that the most amazing job in the world, right? Right.
Because it's not about the assignment, it's about the identity.
Yeah.
We've had that conversation, and the thing that you've said to me a number of different times is, well, I'm this person, this is what I do, this is what I do, this is what I do, but who I am is, you've said a teacher.
That is, I do believe that, correct.
So one of the ways we've kind of worked towards that is, where's the place you feel most alive? Where's the place, to borrow from Chariots of Fire, where he says, when I run, I feel the smile of God.
Oh, I love that.
And, however you define that, there's these times and places in our life where it's like everything aligns.
Yes.
And you feel that connection to something more than just yourself.
Yep.
And it's in that moment you feel that connection. It's like, oh, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And I may do 10 assignments, but ideally they all flow out of this one core. Who am I really?
Well, and as a lot of people know, I'm very faith oriented. I'm connecting to God in those moments. And one of the things that even Joe Dispenza says, and he slips and says God a few times, because I know he tries to keep religion out of it, rightly so. But I do feel like when that meditation is happening, I'm actually experiencing the divine. I'm actually connected with him, and his will becomes my will. And that, I think that's the most powerful piece of it, in finding myself and figuring out who I am in those quiet moments where my nervous system calms down and my brain, both hemispheres of my brain align, and my heart is aligned with those hemispheres of my brain. That's when there's this access, and you've described it before as getting up into a higher, out of the brainstem, right?
Right.
And oxytocin and all these amazing chemicals release, and you just, you're just feeling great and everything. So that has been just the most profound. And I love that we're talking about today, because this experience happened to me today. And now I'm starving for it. Like, I want to go back to that quiet place and, do it again. And that's exciting.
One of the things, and you said rightly so about his keeping religion, I want to say some things about that, because I think that can be super helpful to people, wherever they stand currently. His phrase is often this. He says, I like to speak the language of science because people can come together about that. I avoid the language of religion because that divides people.
Right, unfortunately.
And the dilemma that I think we all face is, because we live on earth and think about spiritual things upward, we think, here's the way I do it, here's the way they do it, here's the way they do it, here's the way they do it. Even within Christianity, there's hundreds of different expressions, but then you add all the other world religions. And so what we do is we think human word towards creator,
right,
and we end up divided.
Right.
Instead of thinking,
it's backwards.
If there's a source, if there's an original source, and even science says that there is, most science, quantum science for sure, there's a point of original, everything came from something. And so if there's a source, what if you think from that perspective towards us? And
top down, and
start describing it from there in terms that are both measurable and applicable, and have to do with, what if that source was, as Einstein says, pure love?
That's right.
And if that source is pure love and it's trying to reach the human race, we can create 100 different responses to that. Most of them are part of our endless proving.
Yeah, man-made.
Can I endlessly prove that I'm worthy to the God that my ancestors have told me about, as opposed to what if the source of all things is inviting us back to wholeness?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you made that distinction.
Yeah.
So let's peel this back because we've talked about a lot.
So much.
So
haven't even gone most of the places I thought we would.
I know. So have we broken down the step 1, step 2, or part 1, part 2? I can't remember. We've gone into place. See, this is what I love. It's just like it's organically flowed in a direction I had no idea it was going to flow in.
So one of the things, I think this is what you're asking about. Once we begin to grasp that identity is not about an assignment, a task, or the labels we wear, but rather it's this infant laying in the water, the core self that's not dead yet, and is waiting for resuscitation, which they need to be held and cared for. Once we come to the realization that it's not about performance, we can pull back from endless proving and just reconnect to that core self. Then the question is, what do we do with the world that we've created?
Yeah.
Because those false self, all those different years of endless proving, we've also created relationships out of them.
And businesses.
And strategies for being loved and seen and valued. And at some point, we begin to go, man, how much of that's really something I would create if I started from here?
Yeah.
What I call this kind of the midlife crisis moment.
Yeah.
Even though it's usually what happens is people hit midlife crisis because in their early 20s, they think, someday I want to do this. They hit their 40s and 50s and go, man, I'm not even close to the target. I'm going to burn it all to the ground and start over. That's where we go wrong.
Yeah.
Right. But instead we start with, instead of I haven't achieved the goals or things I wanted, I've found this baby.
Yeah.
I've found this real version of me. How do I bring that person into these places that I've created? And some of it probably won't stand.
Yeah.
There's some of it that probably will change, but there's we start to, and this is where I thought we would start, but we're so far in, one of the things that I don't usually do this, but there's 2 categories of people, and it's important to start thinking this for people. There's a whole group of people who believe the world happens to them. Right. This has happened to me. This has happened to me. I have no power over this. All these, and by the way, there's a bunch of stuff we don't have power over
or control over.
Or control. But then there's a whole group of people who start to realize at some point in their life, no, I happen to the world. Right? The world happens to me, or I happen to the world. In family therapy terms, it's dependence, i.e., my parents take care of me, my grandparents take care of me, my big sister takes care of me, and I don't have to take care of me because everyone's taking care of me. Therefore, if something goes wrong, it's not about me.
It's not my fault.
It's not my fault. I'm not responsible. But if parents do a good job and they move their kids towards independence, where they start to know, wait, the things that happen are the result of my choices and the ways that I think and the ways that I feel. And I've begun creating the world around me. And that's why I said earlier, it's so important for you to go, I'm the common denominator. In terms of changing your life, that's the key step for everybody to start with is, I'm the common denominator, or I'm not the victim of this. To some degree, I'm both a participant and a creator. And even if I started participating passively, at some point I started to believe things at some pretty deep levels. And if I believe those things, I start to participate in them, even if it's resentfully so.
Right. I have to say something about what you just said, because a lot of times we participate in things that we feel in our gut isn't right, and it is dishonoring to ourselves, but we do it anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
I've heard of that. No, that's incredibly important because that's really where we wander into these really dangerous lifelong patterns of self-harm. Even if it's not self-harm like self-cutting, it's still self-harm like unhealthy relationships, tolerating things we shouldn't tolerate, self-harm like, overeating, undereating, all the different ways that we harm ourselves. It's because in our belief system, we've participated in things we don't feel good about, but at some point our nervous system says, but this is what it takes to be safe. This is what it takes to be powerful. This is what it takes to be in this world for me to feel like I'm in control, not out of control.
So how could somebody listening, think, start to analyze their life and see, where does this apply to me, if at all? Because surely it applies to all of us in some way.
100%. I think that the first thing, and this is where I was thinking layers earlier, so this is a good place to think about it. The first thing is consciousness, the realization. And sometimes circumstances will force you to become conscious, but you can choose a path where you get still and connect to yourself in meditation, or other forms of stillness where you just start to become increasingly connected to yourself.
Going for a walk without your phone, being in nature,
choosing
whatever.
to do something about our addictions and our compulsivities, the ways that we comfort, whatever they might be. And in that, you start to discover some things you wouldn't have known without saying no to numbness. As you start to discover those things, then you ask the question, how much say-so do I have about this? And sometimes we have say-so because it's something I'm doing. Sometimes we may feel like we don't have say-so because it's a pattern that involves other people doing things. And it seems like it may be them, except somehow the same thing keeps happening to me again and again. At that point, we have to ask ourselves the question, how am I getting into these situations and putting up with it until I don't? What am I compromising in my heart?
Right.
And so it starts with consciousness. Then it starts with examining the life that we're in and seeing what are the patterns that we wish were different. And then from there, it's recognizing what do I have choice over and what do I not have choice over? And here's the first layer. We absolutely have choice over being conscious or unconscious. But you mentioned how hard it is. And that's the first step of hard is, man, everything around us is designed to numb us into unconsciousness. You and I both have cell phones somewhere in this building. And the scientists have worked hard on those platforms to make sure that we are addicted to this and checking out, and seeing how many likes we got.
That's one addiction I do not have, thankfully, but it is intentional.
Yeah.
Because there are times where if I do want to feel numb, I'll go on Instagram, start watching reels. And then, of course, my kids and my daughter-in-law, I'm always sending them funny videos, but they're like, oh, this is Terry's once a month, 20 minutes in the bathtub, scrolling through Instagram. But it's easy how you can get sucked into that and time just goes away and you're just numb.
And it's designed for that.
Yeah.
As are many, many things in the world around us designed to keep us numb, because numb is the enemy of consciousness.
And a good clue to that is when we're starting to feel uncomfortable and we start distracting ourselves with something like that.
Right.
The conversation's uncomfortable, the situation's uncomfortable, pick up your phone and go into a place where you can get some hits.
Because numbness feels better than discomfort.
Right.
Numbness feels better than pain.
Right.
Numbness feels better than examining ourselves to decide if we have some responsibility.
Right.
So numbness is really the heart of all compulsivity, is it's some way to be numb rather than feel.
Okay.
But feeling is the necessary result of consciousness, because feeling tells us, now what do we need to do? Right. Once we start to become conscious, we start to feel.
Okay.
Once we start to feel, we can either run from that back to unconsciousness, or we can use what's happening. I'm feeling this. Now what do I need to work on? I feel angry. Oh, what is that? I feel sad. Oh, I probably need to grieve. I feel, and as we start to know what we're feeling, we start to know what we've been running from. And if we start to deal with it, the need for false self starts to go away. So we have absolute choice over consciousness versus unconsciousness. Even when it feels like we don't, it's because it's so programmed into us. We could say it's natural, but it's not. It's programmed after years of living with televisions and screens. We picked that one, but it can also be with junk food. It can also be with, this is where some of the physical stuff comes in. If the ways that we comfort ourselves are physical, we're also doing harm to our physical body. I said this in a setting somewhere yesterday. The first part of the brain that's affected by alcohol is the part of the brain that makes decisions about alcohol.
Yeah.
Or more directly, the part of the brain that makes judgments and good decisions is the first part of the brain that's affected by alcohol.
Right.
So if you know that it's something you should be changing and you have one drink, that one drink goes right to the judgment center of your brain and says, it doesn't matter what decisions you make, you need 3 more of those.
That's why you should never send emails after you had a cocktail or class.
Or have a conversation that's conflictual or right, all those things. And so the same thing is true with anything that numbs us. It's like the first part of us that gets numb is the part of us that decides to stop numbing. Numbness feels so good. There's so much dopamine in it.
Yeah.
And dopamine being a pleasure producer and a painkiller, like both benefits. I don't hurt anymore.
It don't last long and takes more of to get the hit the next time.
Right. It crashes quick and it crashes further than it started out. And so, consciousness is a choice. Working on what comes up after consciousness is a choice. The next step is relationships.
Yeah.
I would say first one is interpersonal. Right. What relationships have I formed based on this version of me?
Can I just say, for me, it's the relationship with myself, which is why that baby is so important, because I haven't had a relationship with myself.
Yeah. I would love for you to say more about both not having a relationship with yourself and what you feel started with that dream.
Well, it actually started with my intention in my meditation. And last week, I had this great intention set out around relationships, that I wanted relationships that were intimate, connected, honoring, fun, exciting. That was my intention. And the elevated emotion, what would I feel when that happened, was gratitude, joy, all these other ones. And you said, I love where you're going with that. Maybe consider making the first relationship yourself. So I was like, dang, that's good. And I think I told you the next day, I was like, that was really good.
Yeah.
Because I started shifting my intention in my meditation to all of those things, connect with myself, honor myself, have fun with myself.
And a week later, you have this dream.
Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah.
Power of intention.
Yeah. And it is the thing, when I say we all have power over consciousness versus unconsciousness, and it is that connection to self that's the beginning of every other connection. I always say, if you disconnect from yourself, you can't connect to anyone else. And if you have a spiritual belief, you can't connect to whatever spiritual source you believe in.
So I want to first, I want to see if there's anything else you want to say, but I want you to talk about I kind of first got connected into this thought process with some work you're doing that people have access to. So I want to talk about that because I think it's a great introduction to that. You really break down some concepts in there that are really great. But before we talk about how, I always love to give people tangibles, and what are some of the key takeaways? I would say if you said there were 3 to 5 takeaways from this hour conversation that we've had, what would they be, and what would be a next step? And then let's talk about your program, because that could be a potential next step.
Yeah. Love that you're making me do 3. Because I
said 3 to 5, but
I'm going to stick with 3 then.
Yeah, 3 is
going to force me to, really chunk it down.
Yeah.
Number 1, choose consciousness.
Okay.
And that sounds simple, but you start to do it and you realize how much war's against it. But number 1, choose consciousness.
So
be
wake
present.
up.
Wake up.
Yeah.
I always think about the Matrix, right?
Yeah.
The very first thing in the Matrix, he's sleeping in front of the computer and it says, wake up, Neo. And now I read that and go, that means a lot of things besides just the guy on the table who's sleeping, right? Wake up. The world will put you to sleep. Number 1, choose to wake up. And that doesn't mean wake up and look at all the conspiracies. That means stop being put to sleep by the constant, barrage of stimulus that will keep you numb. So wake up. You were put here to live.
Yeah.
Live. Don't look back at your life and go, why didn't I go do the things that were... Number 2.
Stay out of the past. That's what I hear you say. Yeah. Get out of the past. I mean, gosh, 58 years of what ifs, I wish. But one of the exercises that I've done, I'm sorry to interrupt you, this just jumped at me, is when I feel myself or recognize a thought that's in the past, I immediately interrupt it and say, that's in the past. Change. And when you don't feed that neuro pathway, it gets weaker and weaker and weaker.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, super important, because I want to make a distinction between what you just said and denial.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that's where, again, often religion goes into denial, and you do that spiritual bypassing thing, or even just people that are the power of positive thinking, as opposed to, I have a choice about what I set my intent and intention and attention on. And so, if I'm driving to work, I have a choice of whether I think about the cars in front of me, the person who just violated my rights, or the things that make me most happy.
Yeah. Or where we go sometimes is the stupid thing I said in a meeting yesterday, or the conversation I had with somebody this morning. Like it's all in the past, no matter what. So you're staying stuck there.
And what we don't recognize is that where we give most of our attention is where our neurons begin to form.
Yep.
And the more we give it the attention, we do develop these clusters of neurons that just kind of hold together. And the more we pay attention, now it gains strength. And as it gains strength, we think about it more. And as we think about it more, it gains strength. And so we're not talking about denial and pretending it's not there. What we're saying is that's there. But I'm also really experiencing great things here. And I'm really hopeful about this. And I'm really looking forward to this. And as we change and turn our attention somewhere else, we decay this cluster of neurons and start to create and form a new cluster. So what we're really talking about isn't denial.
Right.
We don't ignore the fact that there have been painful things or that I said something dumb in a meeting yesterday, which that one's so funny to me. Yeah. But for reasons I don't think I have time to go into, because I still have a third thing.
Yes.
So number one,
conscious.
Wake up.
Wake up.
Did I say number two yet?
You said number two, and you referenced getting out of the past, but that's how I interpreted it.
Okay. What did I say number two was?
I don't remember, but something about thinking in the past, which is what made me get on that
part
rant.
Of waking up.
Yeah. Okay.
So
maybe I haven't said number two.
Turn your attention off the past. So number two, I would say, learn the language of your heart. And I know that can sound, again, like you said earlier, it sounds like I'm back in the 70s. I got a leather vest on. Yeah. But what I'm talking about is literally the language of the heart. Again, some of the stuff I've learned in Joe's.
The energy heart center, not the beating heart.
The thing you said when you had that conversation as a young girl at the table and everything shifted. And I said, how did you know that? What shifted and how did you know? The language of the heart is how we recognize the things that have power, and then the mind translates it into labels. Yeah. Right? And so the language of the heart is not so much just about the emotions, though that's important, and I shouldn't demean that, but it's more about the recognition that there's more to the world than just what meets our eye. And so what that means is, again, from some of Joe Dispenza's work, the thing I've learned is that the mind sends out an electric signal, the heart sends out an electromagnetic signal, and the signal of the heart is significantly more powerful than that of the mind. And in fact, what I've understood is it sends out an electromagnetic signal 3 meters outside of the body. So what that means is we walk around, we are bigger than our body. Yeah. Who we are, really heart-centric, is we take up more space than our physical self does, because our self, our true identity, the baby, if you will, is in here. And if we've learned to ignore that, it's almost like, oh, I thought she was dead. We start to really tune into that and learn that language. She comes back to life. Yeah. That's what I mean by learn the language of the heart. That it's more powerful. And by the way, it's more powerful to create, which is going to be my step 3. Number 1, become conscious. Number 2, learn the language of the heart, which doesn't sound very concrete.
Oh, it's harder than you think.
Yeah. Some people will really think you're getting woo-woo, or people that are concerned about, being overly emotional is kind of the way people talk about it. But again, it's not about emotions. Connected to them, but it's not about that. It's about the signals of the heart and what it means to start to read what your heart knows that your brain doesn't yet know.
Well, I think our heart center is signaling to us all the time. We just ignore it.
Right. I've got a friend who does something called right brain therapy. I should talk to you about him sometime, but he says that the right side of the brain, remember, attachment, connection, experience, is comparable to what most people call the heart. So it's about attachment and understanding experience that's pre-verbal. Third thing is learn the power that you have to not just change yourself, but to change everything around you. That's a whole nother conversation that we
not as a manipulation strategy.
Right.
But which is how my meditation started.
Number 2, right? Number 1 and number 2. Yeah. Wake up, learn the language of the heart, and learn the power of those two things to change things through both healthy interaction, but also through the power of settling into yourself. I'll say this. I'm working with somebody right now who just in the last 3 months has really gotten hold of who she is. And she's been in frustrating family relationships for a year. Well, for a long time. I've known about it for a year. And she's just really settled into, you know what? She didn't have a dream about finding a baby, but she had the equivalent experience. And she's just settled into that. And she's not doing anything different, but all of her relationships in her family are changing because she's different.
Mm-hmm.
And the more different she settles into, people around her can't stay the same.
Yeah. Yep. That's great.
We have way more power to change the world than we think.
So let's wrap it up with talk about your program if people want to explore that a little bit. And then, of course, you know, I love Joe Dispenza's work, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, and all of his stuff that he has on YouTube and on his website. But your work introduced me to this, and you just do such a great job making it more bite-sized. I love Joe's work, but it's deep.
It's deep.
He gets into quantum science, but that resonates with my science brain. But let's talk about the program you have and what that looks like.
Yeah. In fact, the way I came into Joe's work is about a year and a half ago. I just really had the sense that for all the teaching I've done on identity, I've never gone nearly as deep as is possible.
Yeah.
And so I purposed about a year and a half ago to learn more. And one of the things I came across was Joe's work. But in my digging into this concept of identity, certainly understand that identity is not just a concept. It's the reality of, in your dream, finding the baby. In brain science, it's getting back to the right side, where experience and attachment becomes the source of knowing who we are, et cetera, et cetera. And so as I began to dig into that, last year I launched an 8-week course called Decoding Identity. We've done 3 live versions of it. It's an 8-week online course. We've done 3 live versions, but there's a on-demand version of it that you can get into at any point. And you can get in and do the 8 weeks. There's 8 videos that people watch, 1 each week. And then there's literally an 8-week daily workbook. That's, as my wife and I say, I wrote a book. I've literally written a 250-page book on identity, but it's designed to engage you and pull you in, like kind of answer some questions and apply it personally to yourself.
Awesome.
You can do it on your own pace. I think that's the way you've been doing it.
Yep.
Last year, I did the live versions so we could do some question and answer, do some more recording. But starting, today, when you hear this, you can go to Think Differently Academy, which I'm sure that's going to be.
We'll have the link in the show description for sure.
And then find the Decoding Identity on-demand course and jump right in.
Yeah, it's really been great, and just the stories. And I want to throw in, I told you this, a couple of the first videos, your audience is actually a group of counselors, which kind of threw me off. I thought I was in the wrong program, but it's not the wrong program if anybody thinks that, and it keep listening because it's applicable.
Right. Yeah, I do a lot of training for helpers, so I took a couple videos out of one of those to put into this course because, like you said, they're very applicable.
Well, thank you so much. That was deep and fun, and now my listeners know a lot more about me than they ever did before.
I thought it was very brave of you, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Dr. Terri Show. You know, it is truly my heart's desire to help people to bring awareness to key issues affecting our health, both mentally, spiritually, physically, financially. So if today's episode was helpful to you, would you please share this podcast with others? This information is vital for helping our country heal and restore our health, and we would be honored if you would pass it along to your friends and family. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any content from the show, and if your life has been improved by the show, please leave us a review below. We would love to hear from you. See you next time.